Peace, family. It's your brother Marc Lamont Hill. Welcome to Night School. Every night here on the Marc Lamont Hill official YouTube channel, we do a program called Night School, 10:30 Eastern Time every single day, Monday to Friday. It is not a TV show. It is not a podcast. It is a global classroom. And tonight we got a lot to talk about. All around the country, in some ways all around the world, but specifically in the United States, we have seen just a widespread movement of student protests against the war in Gaza. In college campuses, beginning in New York City a few weeks ago at Columbia University, we have seen college students set up encampments. We have seen students take over buildings. We have seen students issue powerful demands to university administration for everything from student housing for Black and brown students, Muslim students, Arab students, and even specifically Palestinian students, to the full divestment of university funds from the state of Israel. All of it has been part of a widespread student protest movement that emerged, of course, after October 7th. And of course, in New York yesterday, we saw Mayor Eric Adams collaborate with the New York City police chief and the president of Columbia University to invade the encampment and to ultimately arrest students who had taken over the Hamilton building, now known as the Hind building. We have seen so many extraordinary acts of violence all around the country as well. We've seen some students break property, but I think the more stunning and more important thing is that we've seen police officers assault students at places like UCLA. We've also seen it at Washington University, St. Louis, where what appears to be an elderly college professor was severely beaten by the local police. And so the question is, where's the leadership? Where is the response? We got university leaders who aren't doing their job. We have local and state law enforcement that don't seem to be doing their jobs. We have people like Eric Adams who have never seen a problem that they don't want to arrest and criminalize. But it doesn't stop there. It goes all the way up to the White House, y'all. It goes all the way up to the White House. Today, in a White House address regarding these protests, President Biden decided to address the condition of campus protests in American universities. And I got to tell you, even for Joe Biden, it was bad. Take a look at what he said.
Trespassing, breaking windows, shutting down campuses, forcing the cancellation of classes and graduations. None of this is a peaceful protest. Threatening people, intimidating people, instilling fear in people is not peaceful protest. It's against the law. Dissent is essential to democracy, but dissent must never lead to disorder or to denying the rights of others so students can finish the semester and their college education. Look, it's basically a matter of fairness. It's a matter of what's right. There's the right to protest, but not the right to cause chaos.
Oh, Joe. Of course, the president's comments come after 130 pro-Palestinian students were arrested at the University of California, Los Angeles last night. And the president had no words for the pro-Israel mob that attacked peaceful protesters the night before that. The president only seems to want to beat up on students. He only seems to want to advance a very troublesome narrative about American college students that makes them seem as if they are not organized, as if they're violent, as if they're not principled, and as if they're not operating in a very long-standing American tradition of radical dissent. President Biden, once again, is saying the wrong thing at the wrong time, and I think he's going to pay for it in November. But anyway, enough about my thinking about this. I want to bring in somebody else. He's somebody who I have known for, God, how long have I known this guy now? 18, I think we did our first TV hit together in 2006. I've known Ben Ferguson for as long as if a baby were born when I met Ben Ferguson, that baby would now be protesting at one of these college campuses. I don't know who side.
100. All right, I gave you options tonight, Mark. Okay, you ready for this? Since it's late night and it's night school, I can give you this hat. Okay, you like that one? Party like W, dress like JFK, think like Reagan.
Wow.
That's your option number one. Okay, you got that? That's option number one. Now, you saw my boys at my alma mater, Ole Miss, singing the Star Spangled Banner, so I can go classic, just Ole Miss hotty toddy hat tonight for you. Or I know this one you're gonna like. This one,
I know what it is.
This one is personally autographed, and I took it out just for you, my friend, just for you. I got that one. You get to pick.
Okay.
You get to pick which one. You want my Party Like W hat?
I'll take the Ole Miss hat.
You take okay, all right. We'll go Ole Miss. We'll go Ole Miss here. Here, I'll even go my kids steal my hats now. That's what happens. See, they don't fit anymore. You like that?
Nice.
I like that.
Ben, I got to tell you, when you said you had a hat for me, my fear wasn't a MAGA hat. It was a Dallas Cowboys hat.
I knew. I was setting you up.
Yes.
I was setting you up.
My heart was
did you ever think, Mark, there would be a day where a MAGA hat would make you calm down over seeing a Cowboys hat? It's all relative. See, it's all relative.
It's all relative. Oh, speaking of unusual situations, I just set you up for a conversation where I suspect you're going to defend Joe Biden and I'm going to be criticizing him, which I know. And for those that don't know Ben Ferguson, Ben is a very well-known political commentator, very well-known, one of the biggest conservative radio hosts in America. He and I work together at CNN. We go just super way back.
You're a brother from another mother.
That's exactly right. And even though Ben is usually wrong on the issues, I still enjoy him. And he actually has a podcast with Ted Cruz.
Yeah, I do my own podcast every day, and then I do one with Ted Cruz 3 days a week as well.
Man, that's one day I'll ask you what it's like to work with Ted Cruz. But so help me understand this, Ben. Help me understand this. President Biden has an opportunity to give a speech to the nation.
Yeah.
Presidents get these opportunities. Trump had a few opportunities like this during, Ferguson. Not Ferguson, during the George Floyd protests. He had an opportunity to speak to the nation about COVID. Obama had the big race conversation a couple of times, actually. They each at least, even if I hated what Trump said, he was at least speaking to his base.
Yeah.
I agreed with much of what Obama said, although I didn't love everything of it. But he was speaking to his base. Who the hell is Biden talking to and why?
Look, I think it's a couple of things. I saw the speech and I played it on my show, the 3 minutes and 4 seconds. And it wasn't a press conference because he didn't take questions. He walked out afterwards. It was a speech that was, I think, trying to figure out the politics of this, which I also think is really sad. And what I mean by that is, look, I think the White House understands they're in trouble for November. You probably are feeling that. The data is showing that. The economy right now is showing that. People are not feeling like he's paying attention to what's going on in their lives. There's real concerns over the border right now, even if you're a liberal, watching the fundamentals of what are changing in places like New York. Every state's now a border state. And so I think what the president's team was trying to do here is they're basically saying, okay, look, how do we placate older Democrats to look like we're going to get things under control while at the same time not pissing off the 35 and under voters of the Democratic Party, and so that they just don't show up at all in November and then I lose. And so the speech was a speech where I'm sure it was written and argued over at the White House. And look, Joe Biden's not involved in that. I just don't see it. And I think Obama, I had a lot of respect for Obama as a politician. I watched him. I was actually asked to do ops on him when he was a senator. And the RNC sent me to go watch him speak at a very small event. There was like 50 people there. And I walked out and I called back to the office and I said, guys, this is the best I've seen since Bill Clinton. This guy's unbelievable. And he could be president of the United States of America if we're not careful. I look at Joe Biden. And I see a guy that I'm like, well, at least he made it through the speech. At least he didn't say pause while he was reading the damn thing. I bet he didn't read this, but maybe one time beforehand where they could tell him where some big words were. And so if you're a Democrat, I'd be furious right now with Joe Biden for this speech. If I'm an older, kind of Democrat, more, establishment type person, I wouldn't feel that great about the speech either. So my thing was, when I watched it, I was laughing because I'm like, he just made both sides mad. Like he was trying. It didn't help him with his base that's older. It certainly didn't help him with his base that's younger. You guys are in essence screwed right now because this guy doesn't know what he believes, and that's the big problem, Mark. I may disagree with you on a lot of issues, but I have a lot of respect that I know that you're not full of crap and that you believe what you say. And I think that's why you and I have had such a good friendship over the years. There are things that you've said that I adamantly disagree with, but I love having the fact, or love knowing, but Mark believes what he's saying. I don't think anyone watching the speech from the president today thought he believed what he was saying or even wrote it or even had input into it.
See, that's the thing, Ben. I actually think Biden does believe it. I just think that he is, I think he's like a bad point guard. He fakes left and just keeps going right. It's like,
he's like Iverson. We're talking about practice, right? Except it's a real game.
Yo, I mean, it's wild to watch. I mean, Joe Biden campaign, when even at a moment where people were calling for defunding police, abolition of police, at least severe critiques of police, Biden said, I want to dump more money into law enforcement. At a moment where the left is coming to terms with Israel-Palestine in a different way, right? They're at least saying, look, human rights considerations have to be made before we fund Israel. Democrats still want to give an open checkbook to Israel, but they at least want it to be conditional on at least a pretense of human rights considerations. Biden's like, there won't be a moment of daylight between me and Netanyahu, between the United States and Israel. He seems to be a very old school Democrat, right? An old school centrist Democrat who's not really that progressive. I mean, he campaigned in the 70s on, no busing. He, at a moment.
No, people, go back to what Kamala Harris said about him during the presidential debate. She accused him of basically being a racist. And then he said, okay, I've got a problem. So now what I'll do is I'll get you to be my vice president.
So in light of that, I don't think that Joe Biden's being dishonest. I think the sad part is this is who he is. But over the years, what he's been able to do is say, yeah, I believe in locking up lots of Black people, but that's no longer like hip to do. So, I'll apologize for the crime bill. I'll apologize for
that sounds like the title of your next book, Mark.
It might be, but it's like it's like he effectively moves with the tide, not at a principle. He opposed reparations, he opposed desegregation, he opposed, all the things, right? But he knew that it was bad for business. I'm not sure that he realizes that being lockstep with Netanyahu right now is bad for business, but I think it's going to cost him the election.
See, this is where I'm different, and maybe it's because I'm looking from the true outside in. I think the president is in a situation now where he's saying, just tell me what to do, what to say to make all this go away. So I come out in the hours after the initial attack, and the State Department, not once but twice, had to take back tweets where they're like, hey, Israel, you guys better be careful, be calm, don't do anything rash here, even though they've just been under a clear attack from terrorists. And so then they had to walk that back not once but twice. And then the White House is like, okay, what do we do now? Well, all right, we're going to stand with Israel, but we're not going to say it too much publicly. We're not going to go talk to Netanyahu. We're not going to do joint press conferences. I don't think there's a policy. I think the policy is, how do you win in November? And are we more afraid of young people staying home and not voting for us? Or are we more afraid that older people are sick and tired of us and they're going to say, we're not voting for you either? Like if you are running his White House right now or his campaign, you have got to be having sleepless night after sleepless night, because at least when I go to war and I've got a candidate that I believe in, I'll use Ted Cruz in 2016. I endorsed Cruz in 2016. I supported him. I was all in. And even Trump said to me afterwards, I got to respect you, because in the primary, you knew what your guy was. You knew why you believed in him. You knew why you backed him. At least had a platform. There's no platform for foreign policy with this president.
Yeah. There's a platform. I just think that it's not.
What is it? Because explain it. And I'm asking, I mean this sincerely. Because the platform and the logic used with Ukraine and Russia is a 180 from the logic that he's using with China and the logic that he uses. I'm talking about, like, what is an adversary and who do you stand up to? And then it's different than what we're now seeing now with Iran. It's different than what we're seeing with Palestinians in Gaza and Hamas and Hezbollah. And it's even different than what we're seeing with Israel. I don't know what their foreign policy is.
I think the Biden plan, I mean, honestly, in some ways, it's not that different than the Trump plan, right? Which was, we don't want to, we want to de-escalate. We want to do whatever policy decision, we'll make whatever policy decision is necessary to de-escalate or to prevent escalation, right? So, for example, with the exception of Israel, right? So the U.S. doesn't want a proxy war with Russia. The U.S. doesn't want a proxy war with China, but they also understand they don't want one with Iran, And the Iran nuclear plan under Obama, and then again now under Biden, the vision is the same, right? It's to say that we want to keep Iran within a manageable space. We want to prevent nuclear proliferation, but we also want to allow Iran to function as any other sovereign nation state, to be able to enrich low levels of uranium, low levels of nuclear matter for other purposes, right? I think,
and I do get that, but my worry is with Iran, and to ask you this question is, they kicked out those that were monitoring the inspections, and they said, you're out of here, and they're gone. You've got a foreign policy that says that we have sanctions on Iranian oil, which is funding everything that they want to do, including funding and supporting terrorists. And yet we're not, those sanctions are there almost like as a, hey, we have sanctions on Iran, even though we're not imposing those in sanctions. You got these ghost boats that are filled with oil every day that aren't ghosts anymore, that are running straight to China with this oil that they're buying at a discount on the black market, which everyone knows is happening because they're no longer even trying to hide it. So I sit there and I go, what does the world take from this? I think the world takes from it is, do whatever the hell you want to do right now, because Joe Biden isn't going to stop you. At least Trump was different, where it was like, I'll meet with any bad guy in the world anywhere, and I'll try to de-escalate. I'll meet with Kim Jong-un, and I'll walk over there and I'll shake his hand, and I'll have that conversation. Hell, I'll talk to Vladimir Putin face-to-face. I don't care. But I'll also call a terrorist in the Middle East and tell them where they are. And if they lay another finger on another American in Afghanistan while I'm president, I'm going to blow you up. Like, that's at least a foreign policy that's behind something. I don't think anybody expects anything from Joe Biden right now. That's got to be worrisome moving in November. Am I wrong?
Well, I think Joe Biden is worrisome in November for lots of reasons. It's funny, here at Night School, my audience, like me, is to the left of Joe Biden mostly. So the thing where they will agree with you, and you can even see in some of the comments they're agreeing with you, is because we're all like, yeah, Joe Biden's the wrong guy, and Joe Biden is full of shit, right?
Who was the guy? By the way, you can say it again. Joe Biden was what? I barely heard that. I just want to stick that on loop on my Instagram reel later.
Like we all are critical of Joe Biden.
So then, who do you wish you had? I haven't heard. I want to know. Like, who was your perfect candidate?
I've always been a Green Party guy. So, I've never met a Democratic candidate who I would say is perfect, or even within the boundaries of like mainstream politics. What I would say is, in 2020, I was, for the first time, optimistic about the possibilities of a Bernie presidency and a Bernie victory.
Yeah, Democrat Party screwed him in the primary. God, can we just remember that?
He got screwed in 16 and 20.
Yeah.
And I think in 20, the fear of Trump, which was a real fear. I mean, I was very afraid of Trump. A Trump reelection made people be as pragmatic and as traditional and as boring as possible, right? It's like when you're in a bad relationship. I meet women sometimes who tell me they're in like these awful relationships with these really terrible men. And then the next time they pick a guy, they pick somebody who, even if they don't like him as much, he's dependable, he's honest, he comes home every night. You do know what I mean? And that's who Joe Biden is for Democrats. He's somebody, look.
It was a safe bet, and it was the palatable candidate that you thought you could get across the finish line easiest. And Bernie Sanders was not going to be the guy, because he was out there saying, I am a socialist.
Yeah, I mean, he's a social democrat, though. I mean, he's about as socialist as any Democratic candidate or any progressive candidate of any party, in the middle of the 20th century. I mean, he wasn't, I don't know if he and Roosevelt are radically different, right? But it's the language of it, and that's an important point though in terms of the framing of all of this.
All right, I have a theory that I want to ask you about. And I've been
Yeah.
saying this, especially the last couple of weeks on college campuses. I have been saying that the Democratic Party, for all intents and purposes, is dead. That it's masquerading now because it's palatable to be a Democrat still and not say that you're a socialist or a Marxist or a communist. But if you look at the younger Democrats that are coming up, they are not Democrats. Like, they're very open and honest. I can respect a Rashid Tlaib or an AOC.
Say more about that, because I'm not sure I believe that.
Well, so I mean, like, I feel like you look at people like Rashid Tlaib, you look at AOC, you look at the squad in general, you look at people like Beto and others who are out there, like they're pretty much like, hey, I'm not really a Democrat. I'm more of a socialist on these issues. I'm more of a communist kind of on these things. I'm a little bit Marxist over here. If you look at what they actually say, but they don't want to use the words. But my point is this: the Democratic Party used to be over here. I think it's like getting off screen over here now. And at least there's some intellectual honesty from some of the younger Democrats on Capitol Hill. Like, we're not the party of Richard Gephardt anymore, or Al Gore, or Bill Clinton. Like, even like, yeah, but that's my point. That's exactly what I'm going to. And I think even like if you said on the scale of where the Democratic Party is, and it was more of the conservative side, I'd put it over here with Obama, and I'd put the 35 and under Democrat like over here now. There, it used to be it was right here, right? He was over here, and then you had the more establishment, the Lieberman-esque guys over there. Am I wrong?
Yeah, I mean, you definitely had a range. You definitely had a range.
But if you guys moved, has the Democratic Party moved? And that's part of the problem now with Joe Biden.
So again, I'm not a Democrat, but what I would say is the Democratic Party has not moved. I actually think quite the opposite is the case. I sometimes, when I hear these people talk, wonder why they even identify as being on the left. It's interesting. I guess again, it depends on the place you operate from. I would also disagree with how you are characterizing the squad and people like them. In the middle part of the 20th century, think about the New Deal, right? This was a moment where we said, look, we're going to widen the social safety net. We're going to create a bunch of social programs, from Social Security to expanding, more broadly expanding the welfare state for poor people, to education reform so that everybody can have access to high quality schools, right? There was a belief that if we invested in the most vulnerable people in this country, the country would be better. FDR was not a communist. FDR was not a socialist. And again, I don't think we should also demonize these words. I don't think there's nothing wrong with being a socialist. There's nothing wrong with being a communist. But I just don't think that's what these people are. By the time you get to the 80s, Reagan now, and the rise of the conservative movement, the neoconservativist movement, you start to see.
You're making me want to put my Reagan hat back on.
I know.
I'm just saying, right?
You're probably getting teary-eyed for the Gipper there, but like now all of a sudden we're relying on what we call neoliberalism, right? We're saying the market is going to determine everything, not liberalism in terms of like Democratic Party, but like liberalizing the economy, liberalizing the market, letting the market be the determinant factor of everything. So everything's privatized, everything's based on economic models. And so to me, what we're seeing, and by the time let me say one more thing, by the time you get to the 90s and Bill Clinton comes back, Bill Clinton, as a master politician, understands that he can't be a FDR Democrat. He has to be a DLC Democrat. He has to be a centrist Democrat. So he does that through economic policies, like his education reform policies, his welfare reform policies. These are shrinking the safety net, not growing them. And he adopts some of those cultural moments. Like, remember when he attacked Sister Soldier? Yeah. Like, I mean, he's like, look, I know how to win. I'm going to make these Southern white boys happy, and I'm going to play the saxophone on Arsenio Hall again.
And don't forget, the most powerful thing he ever did was get people to relate to him that were overweight in America. He's a guy that went running to McDonald's to get a bacon, egg, and cheese biscuit. That is politics right there, my friends.
It really is.
I mean, that's when I was like, this guy's good. Like, when you watch a dude run to McDonald's, you can relate to that.
Right. Bill Clinton had that thing, but it wasn't just in terms of his public performance. It was at the policy level. But because people loved him so much, the left loved him, black people loved him. They tried to call Toni Morrison, the greatest writer America's ever produced, as far as I'm concerned, said that he was the first black president. And so when you have people talking like that, it shielded him from legitimate left-wing criticism. The reason I'm saying all this is because when you get to the squad, yeah, they're to the left of Bill Clinton, they're to the left of Al Gore, they're to the left of Obama, maybe.
For sure.
For sure. But they're not advocating communism. And again, I'm not demonizing communism. They just ain't it. They're not even, I mean, they're democratic socialists, which again are just social democrats. They believe in expanding access to the means of production for the working class people, but they believe in private business. They believe in private economies. They're not anti-capitalist. They believe in more regulation, which is a very
well. They're not big fans of people that make money, though. Let's be honest. They've never met a millionaire they liked unless they're donating their campaign.
Now they want millionaires to pay their fair share, which again becomes a really good question for you, right? What should somebody who makes, let's not say $1 million a year, because that can vary.
A million's fine. Like let's just round numbers.
I just know in different cities, $1 million means a different thing.
Look, I've always wanted a rich friend. You were my first rich friend, Mark. And I think
yeah, right.
when you were making $1 million plus a year in the early days, when you were getting rich, I didn't think you should have to pay more than 30%. I think when you take a calendar year and the first 3 months of the year you're working for the government, that is paying more than your fair share. I also have a different viewpoint because I grew up in Memphis and I grew up poor. And so I've had to work for every single dime that I've ever made. I was given nothing. I love my mom and dad. They're amazing. But they basically said, good luck. That was the strategy. Good luck and work your ass off.
Yeah.
I had a lawn business when I was 7, right? And never stopped working from that time forward. And so I look at it and I say, the definition of fair share to me is, look, I want to pay the least amount of taxes I can possibly pay legally, and I want to pay the least amount of taxes that I can pay for basic services. I do not believe that a bloated government is a good thing. I do not believe that the government should be a father to everyone. I do not believe, for example, that the government should pay for college tuition, because I worked my ass off, took it very seriously, didn't fail classes, and got out in 3.5 years instead of 4 years because I was taking on debt. And when I wrote my book, I was 20 years old. My very first check that came in, I paid off my student loan debt. And it pisses me off when I see these guys that are like the violinists that got $250,000 of his student loans paid off the other day. When I made the tough decision, because I think in America, we have this idea now that everything should somehow be like subsidized by the government. Like, no, it shouldn't. Should not be subsidized by the government. But back to if you take $1 million, I don't think you should pay more than 30%. That means that you're basically almost 3 months of the year. You're working January, February, and March to pay your state, your local, and your federal taxes. And then you finally make money for yourself. So I'm working a fourth of my year for a government. I think that is more than my fair share.
And I guess, again, you'll be shocked to know that I disagree with everything you just said. First, I think there is a kind of interesting sort of duality.
By the way, somebody asked a question at the bottom. I got to answer. He goes, what do you think poor is? Poor is when someone's knocking on your door with a foreclosure notice.
Well,
poor is driving a Honda Prelude from 1988 with no AC on it with 187,000 miles. This guy. Poor is when you're pulling your CV axle in your front lawn and they call the police because you're working on your car too late at night.
So there's no one, I would imagine, is questioning that you've been poor before.
Well, some people they're like, oh, that guy was never really poor. No, I was.
I don't doubt that you were poor. But I think, one, I don't want to frame the narrative that hard work is like this magic silver bullet for poverty. Working hard is necessary. And if you work hard enough, you will likely survive.
Yeah.
I don't think that there is no place for personal responsibility or accountability or hard work. But most Americans who are among the working poor are just that. They work hard every day and they still can't pay their bills. They don't have access to a living wage. They don't have access to basic services. I meet so many people who go to work every day and just paying for childcare.
No, look, the cost of living right now is out of control.
It's prohibitive. But there's no access to living wages, right? So for me, the question about poverty and the question about taxes are in conversation with each other. When I pay my taxes, and Ben, of course, is teasing y'all. I definitely was not a millionaire when I met Ben, and I definitely was not his first rich friend. But you can't be, if you're a Republican, I'm the richest person, you know, you're doing something wrong. but the idea here was, from where I sit, that when you pay those taxes, when I pay taxes now, I'm not paying it to the government. Like, I don't think about it as some greedy landlord who's asking for my money. I'm thinking about it as an investment in the greater good. Those who have been given the most have the most responsibility to give. To whom much is given, much is required. It's that logic, it's that governing idea that shapes how I think about taxes. Again,
let me ask you this. I say 3 months of the year working for a government before I make a dime. I think that's fair. What do you think is fair?
You know, it's an interesting question. I don't have a number in my head, but I think that whatever number I would develop would be graduated based on how much money you have. I think, for example, you know, under Obama and under Biden, we're talking anything more than $250,000 a year was viewed as the rich, right? In terms of tax policy, right? It was like taxes.
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to raise tax on anybody making under 250. That was their tagline.
Right. So, which is, I mean, most $250,000 is a lot of freaking money. You know, it's a lot of freaking money. And at the time where you were driving that old car and you were poor,
I did love it though, man. That thing was awesome. When you get a car and you own it with 187,000 miles, Mark, with no AC, there's just freedom involved, right?
Oh, believe me, my first car was a 1994 Geo Metro with about 180,000 miles on it, maybe 190,000 miles on it. And what's crazy is I bought that car in 1997, so it had that many miles in 3 years. So that's a whole other story for another time. But my point is, if someone had given you $250,000 right then, you would have seen that as like hitting the Powerball. It would have been like
for sure, yeah,
unimaginable amount of money.
Dude, 70 grand when I was a kid was when you were rich, especially in Memphis. I mean, my dad, I think my dad, I asked him because he was a police officer. And I think his first job when he took in law enforcement, he was making, I think he said $14,200.
Yeah. So my point is, I understand that $250,000 is a lot of money, but the person in New York City that makes $250,000 a year and is paying, you know, trying to buy a house where buying a 1-bedroom apartment could cost you $1 million, $1.5 million in the city, etc. Rent is going to be $3,000 or $4,000 a month. You know, with 2 kids, etc. I understand that that's not the same as Jeff Bezos. So my vision of what people should be paying is, you know, more targeted toward the 1%. That's not to say that we all shouldn't pay more, but the 1% has to pay its fair share. And the way tax policy works, as you well know, is that the billionaires and the trillionaires of the world, not literally trillionaires, no Scrooge McDucks out there, but the ultra billionaires out there often don't pay any taxes. And the Republican defense has been, well, they create the jobs, they take the risk, they make the investment. All true. But I refuse to believe, and I think the data shows this, the evidence shows this, that Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk could afford to pay $50 million more a year in taxes, and they wouldn't lose one iota of their lifestyle or their safety or their security. But if 20 billionaires did that, we would immediately have, you know, enough money to significantly invest in education, to significantly invest in infrastructure.
This is the difference. So I think for, you know, you go back to faith and you talk about to those that are given, right, much as expected of them to give back. This mentality, I think the difference is, I don't think the government should rob me when I'm wealthy, especially if I'm a smart and brilliant person who is giving back to the community and can make my dollars go further. Bill and Melinda Gates are a great example of this. The ex-wife of the guy who started Amazon's another great example of this. They do so much more when they have oversight of their dollars, and they give millions of dollars and millions of dollars. And on top of, but hold on, let me finish. On top of what they've already been taxed. And they do pay taxes. The idea that rich people don't pay any taxes, I'm sorry, it's just not accurate. The amount of money, for example, the Elon Musk or Bill Gates is paid in taxes, whether it's corporate, personal, property taxes, and all the taxes, payroll taxes, everything else, is in the billions of dollars.
But I'm talking about income tax right now.
Yeah, I get your point on income tax. Hold
on, Ben. That's another Republican sleight of hand, because when I talk about rich people, people say, "Oh, they pay all kinds of taxes," right? But when we say poor people go, "Poor people don't pay taxes." Poor people pay payroll tax all the time, so we can't have it both ways. Payroll tax accounts for, I believe, 3/5 of all federal tax revenue, right? So we can't go around saying poor people don't pay taxes, while in ignoring payroll tax, but then look at rich people and say, well, they do pay tax, and then use the very same payroll tax on the other end and count theirs. What I'm saying is, in terms of federal income tax, taxing your actual income, Donald Trump in 2016, excuse me, and 2017, paid $750 in federal income tax. $750.
Because he had, but if you should be able to roll over losses. That's where you and I would disagree. I think if you lost a lot of money in the past, you should be able to roll that over. If we're going to be intellectually honest about it. But let's go back to what you said about people not paying taxes. You go to the national debt clock. It's nonpartisan. National debt's $34.7 trillion. The debt per citizen right now, Mark, in this country is $103,000. Now, you talk about a lot of people not paying taxes or paying taxes. Debt per taxpayer, because the national debt clock knows how many people don't actually pay taxes. If you just have the debt paid off by the taxpayers that are actually paying taxes, the number goes from $103,000 per citizen as national debt to $266,000, $951 per taxpayer. So there are, in fact, a lot of people in this country, so many that don't pay taxes, that when you take the 106,000, that if everybody had to write a check to get the debt to zero right now, and then you said, okay, we know that everybody doesn't pay taxes, so we're only going to move to the people that do pay taxes, it jumps from $100,000 to 200. I want to make sure I get the number right. $266,951. So the idea that there are a lot of people out there that don't pay taxes, it is absolutely accurate.
My argument is about, again, poor people don't pay tax. Poor people, everybody pays taxes, right? Everybody who works pays taxes. Let's start there, right? In terms of intellectual honesty. My point is that the wealthiest among us don't pay a sufficient share, and that burden has trickled down to people who make significantly less.
So again, my question though is, if you make a million, how much should you pay? It's at 34% now, plus all your state taxes.
I mean, I think there has to be some complexity to it based on region. But if I were just to pull a number, I'd say 40%.
Okay, so we're only off by 6%.
Yeah, but if
this is why you and I can be friends.
But Ben, if you would have raised the tax code to 40% across the board, and you paid specific attention to the 1% and didn't allow tax loopholes, we wouldn't just be recuperating a clean 6%. We would be getting literally tens of billions of dollars in tax revenue. And that's my point. Again, I'm not, my beef isn't the 34 versus the 40. My beef is the fact that the ultra rich get off. And this idea that philanthropy can become the proper alternative to paying your taxes, I think is deeply problematic. If Bill and Melinda,
I don't think it's one or the other. I think
but here's what I'm saying though. If Bill and Melinda Gates decide tomorrow that they no longer want to invest money in building schools or providing healthcare in Africa or enhancing food security, they decide they only want to invest their money in the opera, and they're going to decide to spend $50 million a year in building opera houses all around the country. That would be their right as philanthropists, right? But it wouldn't do anything to address the issues of poverty in the United States. And the difference is, and this is where you and I fundamentally disagree, is that I don't see redressing the issues of poverty as an option for them, as a choice. The only way you get $1 billion is through large amounts of economic exploitation. You don't get billions of dollars unless people die. You don't get millions of dollars unless people are exploited.
See, I fundamentally disagree with that.
There's no way to get billions of dollars without.
No, like the tech boom is a great example. If you created Netflix, did you exploit somebody, for example? No. Redbox, when they were making hundreds of millions of dollars, which, by the way, then it went and turned into a disaster as technology beat them out. Were they deserving of like, they're the evil people and they exploited people because they brought a service when Blockbuster went under and they figured out a better way of doing it? No. Like, if you came up with electric cars, take Musk out of it, just Tesla and what they've done. Did you exploit someone because you took an insane risk to build electric vehicles? No. Are there some people that have exploited people to make money? Yes, of course. You could argue that with diamonds. You could with mining. Hell, I've got a coin here, right? Like if it's gold coins, for example, and mining, or if you look at what's happened, for example, with the green alternative energy, there are people that have absolutely exploited people in that industry and have hoodwinked people in that industry to make money. But to say that the only way you can become a billionaire is to exploit people. No, you could come up with a brilliant idea like Amazon or Microsoft or a BlackBerry back in the day. Hell, Michael Jordan's going to die a billionaire. Did he exploit somebody because he was good at basketball? Now, you could say Nike did on slave labor. I would agree with you there. But I'm talking about Michael Jordan as a brand, or Tiger Woods as a brand.
And this is where you and I are probably talking past each other. My point isn't that everybody who has $1 billion got that $1 billion through a evil talent or an evil gift or an evil idea. What I'm saying is the accumulation, hoarding of that amount of money is dependent upon economic relationships and investments and connections that are exploitative. So you use Michael Jordan as an example. Yes, Michael Jordan doesn't have $1 billion because he played in the NBA. He actually only made $30 million a year for his last 3 years, and before that he had minimal contracts.
Nothing compared to nowadays.
You made more last year than Michael Jordan made in his whole life, right?
If that was true, that would be amazing. And no offense, but I wouldn't be doing the show with you right now. I'd just be counting my dollars.
Fair enough. But Michael Jordan made his money because of an extraordinary deal that he struck with Nike, whose revenue is in the super uber billions, if not trillions, over the course of the
lifetime of the company.
Life of the company. And that is directly related to the exploitation of third world labor, right? Again, if I looked at Bill Gates, we could look at anybody here, and you look at not just sort of how much, what was their idea that initiated a boom. The other question is, how are they able to sustain or build or even scale these companies? Well, it's by taking a disproportionate amount of the labor out of the company, right? If you look at the relationship between CEO wealth and laborers, we see nothing but an exploitative relationship. But beyond that, they're not giving living wages. Look at Walmart. Look at these. People are not getting living wages. They're not getting healthcare. They're not getting full-time jobs. These are all of the pieces of the puzzle that I'm saying are tied to billionaires. But at a more fundamental level, or more simple level, rather, all I'm saying is that if we're in a country right now where there are people who don't have food, and people who don't have living wage jobs, and people who don't have quality schools, and all of this stuff is tied to how much money you have. Poor people go to worse schools, they eat worse, they go to jail more, they don't live as long, they die more at birth. All your economic class status is your social destiny in lots of ways. And I think that any system where that's the case is evil, and has to be fixed. And the way you fix it is by rendering unto Caesar, right? So that's the only case that I'm making. And I think that too often we focus on this American idea that anybody can be a billionaire. I find some of the most frustrating conversations are not with rich people who defend these ridiculous policies. It's with poor people who say, I don't want I don't want a death tax, or I don't want to raise capital gains tax, because one day I might be a billionaire too, and if I'm a billionaire, then I and it's like, dude, you work at Hobby Lobby, you work at Chick-fil-A. These policies are harming you, and part of the cult of personality of Donald Trump, and I want to get your thoughts on this, is partly that he makes everybody feel like that they could be him, and so they defend right-wing elites who act like they're down with us. And
I just think, like, I mean, I've got 3 boys now, and so I think about, how am I going to raise them? One, I'm going to make them work, because I think if you don't have your kids work, then it's a problem, and they don't understand the value of a hard day's work, and they don't understand that you need to study hard, and that you need to have a game plan for your life, a business plan for your life, and how you're going to provide for yourself and your future and your family and your kids in the future. However, I love Donald Trump's policy of you can do what I did, because I think we have for far too long coddled too many young people in this country to make them believe that there's enough excuses for why they're not making it. My dad never gave me an excuse. He never said, hey, we live in a high crime area. We live in an area that's the most dangerous city in America right now, for example, is Memphis. He didn't say to me, hey, you're probably not going to go to college. What he said was, you better figure out how to go to college, because you're going to pay for it. And so I had an option. It was either get really good at academics or get really good at a sport. I was a good athlete, but it was real clear early on that he wasn't discouraging me of anything. He was just making it clear that you better wake up and pull yourself up by your bootstraps. I like that mentality from Donald Trump. Let me explain it.
Yeah.
You had the lowest unemployment rate in history when Donald Trump was president for African-American men, African-American women, Asian Americans, and Latino Americans, the lowest in history. He basically said, my job is not to be your father. The government's job is not to be your daddy. The government's job is not to take care and coddle you. The government's job is to give you the opportunity to succeed on your own, and to then learn and grow. And whether it is my career path, right, which had started at taking care of lawns, okay, and then actually like cleaning tennis courts and working in the shop for the rich people, right, then learning that game from those people, and then getting a college scholarship from it. Like it's being a entrepreneur, and you don't have to. The government has now basically said, no, you don't have to do anything if you don't want to. We're going to take care of you. We're going to give you a lot of excuses. Hey, you're in a failing school. There's your excuse. Hey, you live in high crime. There's your another excuse. Hey, you're in a broken home. There's another excuse for you. That is the problem. And so I don't think it was Donald Trump like lying. I think Donald Trump's point that he made that connected with so many minorities, and the reason why I think he's actually going to do really well with minority voters this time is he's basically saying this other idea, which is the government's your daddy, and the government's here to fix all your problems, which they're lying to you when they tell you they're going to fix them, because they're not, is I'm going to give you opportunities through getting the government out of your damn way. And I'm going to make sure that you have the chance with small businesses to succeed, and low interest rates to succeed, and to buy a home and to be able to afford that home to succeed. And I'm also going to do something else, for example, with schooling, where I don't say, let's just keep throwing money at a failed system. Let's do something different, because we've been doing this for 40 years and it still sucks. Like, that's why I think he's probably going to win in November, is because people are now going back to that, going, oh, yeah, my life was better then. It was easier to start a company then. It was easier to buy a house then. It was easier to live the American dream then than it is right now.
So I would push back to you against the Trump thing. I mean, it is factually correct that Black unemployment reached an all-time low, or a modern, all-time low under Donald Trump.
It was pre-COVID. It absolutely was.
Yeah. I said that's a fact.
Okay, I thought you said it wasn't a fact. Sorry.
It's a fact. But it's sort of misleading. It's like on the wire when my man says, I don't take credit for when crime goes down, because then I got to take credit for when it goes up. The Black unemployment dropped steadily from 2009 into the Trump administration. According to almost every economist, there's no reason to believe that Trump was responsible for Black unemployment going down. because it was he not only was it going down before he was president, it continued the same economic growth pattern. The pace didn't increase, the scale didn't increase. There's no reason to attribute that to Trump. But if we are going to attribute that to Trump, we could also say that the median Black income fell from, I think, 42,000 to 40,000 during the Trump administration. I'm not blaming Trump for Black income.
But the reason why is because when you add new workers in that start off at a lower salary because they're new workers that are getting in the workforce, the number is obviously going to go down. I mean, we've had that debate at Harvard, and they've said, yes, when you have an expansion of the workforce, you do see the median income usually drop because you have so many first-time job, that are getting their first job. You're not going to make 42 grand, right? You're going to make a lot less than that in your first job. But what Donald Trump did also is he protected American workers. You look at what's happening now with a wide open southern border. We're all competing now, especially if you're in Texas, all right, where I am right now, with millions of new people that have come in this country that have broken in. And so I think every state now is a border state. It's harder to get housing now in poor areas than ever before. Look at whether it's New York City or Denver, Colorado right now. The cost of living in Denver is out of control just on the cost of living because so many illegal immigrants there. And so when all the housing's disappearing, it hurts Americans. And so I go back to what Trump said. And again, I know a lot of people watch your show, they probably don't like him. And I understand that. But just understand the policy was when you have a secure border, you're not competing for 20 other million people that have come in under Biden for jobs and housing.
But I don't tie it, and I know we got to run, but I don't tie my economic destiny to the subjugation of the containment of immigrant populations. To me, in this country right now, we need living wage jobs. We need the rich to pay their fair share. And I think part of the cult of personality of Trump, I think you're absolutely right, is to run around saying, hey, look at that immigrant over there. That's the reason why your life sucks, right? And that is literally how he sort of built this kind of kind of fascist kind of political narrative of, I am your hero, I'm the savior. Yeah, I'm a billionaire, but I'm also the everyman. Yeah, I represent the poor, but I am from the elite circles, and I have the pathway out. And the pathway out is to point the finger at that guy over there. And even as I hear you tell your story about having to work, knowing you had to save for college or get really good at a sport, again, I respect the work ethic. I respect the calculus you made. My point is, if we properly invested in society, there'd be a university for free that you could go to so that you wouldn't have to have student loans and all that stuff. And in the same way that as we began the conversation, you were critical of student loan repayment or student debt forgiveness.
I'm critical of it because I think it's buying votes. I just think it's straight up buying votes. And right, it's a tactic to buy votes. And it's frustrating for people like myself that had to take out student loans. I didn't have a semester in college where I didn't take 17 hours or less because I was taking on the student loans. And then all of a sudden, this moron takes out $250,000. He's a 52-year-old violinist and all of his debt gets paid off last week. That pisses me off as a hard worker.
Right. But here's the problem. Y'all don't have that same energy, that same smoke for the situation where a small business owner gets a huge business loan and spends 20 years paying it back, and Wall Street or Shake Shack gets a PPP loan that wipes out all of their debt. Because when rich people do it, we say, oh, well, they're stimulating the economy.
No, I hated the PPP loans.
But what I'm saying, though, is I didn't hear you criticizing Trump for it.
And sure, I did. Oh, I was screaming about how absurd this was. Like, this is going to be 60% abuse.
Is that buying votes? Let me ask you a question. Was that buying votes?
Was PPP?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think if you look at the context of what was happening in the country when they were doing PPP, I think you would agree. Everybody said the world was on fire and the economy was on fire, and they were trying to stop gap it. Like, you got to go back and look at the time. But once we saw the abuse and how it was being abused, okay, and we realized that this was a well-intentioned idea with a house on fire that then is something that needed to be reined in quickly, and they didn't rein it in. I was screaming from the hilltops that all of this money we were going to print was going to be a disaster for the economy. It was going to mean inflation was coming. It was going to mean that it was going to be stagnation of jobs and wages. And that's exactly what happened.
Wait, so just so I'm clear, before the abuse, as you put it, you were not critical of it.
No, I was suspicious, and I raised those. I said, here is my worry. When it first came out, because I own small businesses, I own them. And when COVID was going down, and they were like, and then I had employees coming to me, Mark, going, hey, can you fire me? Because I'll make more money sitting at home than I will working for you. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to fire you so you can game the system. Like, no, you're show up for work. If you want to quit, quit. But I'm not going to fire you. They're like, well, my brother's making more money not going to work than he's going to work. And when that happened, I was screaming on TV that this was a disaster. We need to stop it now.
So that's two things. One, I want you to consider the context in which we're positioned, where you literally, if you believe that hard work is not just a good idea, but a moral virtue, and we have an economy that rewards people for not working, that you can do better without working, that means the system needs to be repaired. It needs to be completely.
Look, if we, here's where you and I think. Here's where you and I think agree.
But there's another point here. There's another point here. Again, I think that when we make investments for poor people, we forgive their debt, which also stimulates the economy, which also creates breathing room for them in the same way that it does for Wall Street when we forgive PPP loans. One is seen as a necessary, as you framed it, like a necessary strategy to save the economy. The other is seen as just a giveaway to poor people. And in general, and I'm not speaking about you now, I'm speaking of the Republican Party in general, most don't say a word about PPP loan forgiveness, but they have everything to say about student debt forgiveness. I've even seen Republican politicians and pundits get PPP loans forgiven and still be mad at debt forgiveness for poor people. I'm saying let's invest in both. Let's have a conversation about both. But I know we got to run because I got to get to two more stories. But Ben, yo, man, thank you. I
enjoyed it. Always a pleasure, my friend. I hope that people do this more often with people that they disagree with. This is the reason why when you text me, I was like, yes, I'm all in. I want to do it because these are the conversations that it's become so. I say this to people when I'm doing college campus tours. They talk about, now it's so extreme left and right. And I'll end with this. We need more of these conversations if we want America to be a better place. I love that you and I get to do this. So I cherish your friendship and thank you for having me on your show.
All right, family, welcome back to Night School. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Ben Ferguson. Let me just say something to y'all, because I see some of the conversations going on in the comments. Sometimes I have guests on who agree with me fully. Sometimes I have guests who I'm going to be debating with. Sometimes I have guests on who's going to be teaching me stuff or teaching all of us stuff. The point of Night School is to offer different types of analysis. Tonight, the reason why we had Ben on, it was a couple of reasons, but the primary one was thinking about the mainstream political calculus that's taking place as we enter the election season. How are Republicans framing and strategizing against Joe Biden? How are Democrats thinking about Joe Biden? I think part of our conversations have to include sort of hearing how other people talk about things. Another reason why I do these conversations, just for context, is to model the dialogue. I'm not talking about some romanticized idea of civil engagement. Not that. I want you to hear the talking points, and I want you to have the language, the tools, and the facts that are necessary to refute those arguments. So when someone next time says, well, Trump had Black unemployment at the lowest, you can say, well, yeah, but it was at the lowest, but it was here under Obama, and then it kept dropping, and the pattern stayed the same until Trump comes in. Trump didn't fix anything. Trump didn't change anything. You can't credit Trump for Black unemployment, but it's a point that's made, and it's not untrue. It's not untrue that it happens. The why is what's inaccurate or imprecise, and that's where we come in to have that conversation. And then sometimes the debate is here. I didn't expect us to talk about tax policy. Honestly, I expected to talk about Tom Cotton. I just didn't get a chance to. And for those of you writing in, by the way, yes, to my left is the Sixers game. You know how much I love y'all. To miss a game 6 in Philadelphia, Sixers Knicks, to talk to y'all. I'm a courtside season ticket holder. And you know where I'm at right now? I'm at night school with y'all. I love y'all. I'm also disgusted. I'm sick. I am throwing up in my brain at this devastating loss that my Sixers have undertaken. So I want you to know that I'm not well today. Yeah, somebody said it was, no, normally it is the baby. But when it's the baby, I turn this way. When it's the playoffs, I turn that way. So now y'all know the cheat code for whether I'm paying attention or not to the game. I was listening to Ben, of course. I just looked up to see the score. But yeah, these dialogues are going to be different. Most nights you're going to love the guest and agree with them. Some nights you're going to love the guest and disagree with them. Some nights you're going to hate the guest, but find the conversation valuable. And I hope that you all find value in it. If not now, maybe later on. Those of you who are New York Knickerbocker fans, oh wow! I just see my producer sending me a note like 15 minutes ago telling me to get the proceedings proceeding and to move on. We're going to wrap because I've actually been keeping my producer longer than I intended to, and I do apologize for that. I'm going to end just by showing you this flag of SZA. Can we just show the SZA video real quick and then we call it a day? Last night at a concert in Australia, SZA took to the stage and she not only put on an amazing performance, she also waved the Palestinian flag as she talked to the crowd. This was a powerful moment and really an extension of a powerful movement. Shout out to SZA for this. There are so many celebrities out there, so many people who are afraid to be courageous, who are afraid to speak up and speak out. I'm not saying everybody who's in the world, in the public eye, has to agree with me politically or agree with anybody politically. What I am saying is if you have a point of view and you believe in it and you know it's the right cause and you don't say anything about it, you're a coward. And there are many people out there. Some are billionaires. Some are at the top of the charts. Some have Q scores through the roof. They're the most famous people in the world. And they are saying nothing. They have room to lose money. They have room to lose gigs. They have room to lose relationships, and they won't do it. But SZA stands up there waving the Palestinian flag. And sometimes, particularly as artists, you don't have to do the most. You don't have to give a full speech. You don't have to write a book on the genocide in Gaza. Just that sign of solidarity, just holding up that Palestinian flag, just waving in front of a sold-out crowd inside of the settler colonial nation of Australia. You wave the Palestinian flag at a moment where cowards like Eric Adams are saying never wave a foreign flag, at a moment where Joe Biden is shouting down student protesters, at a moment where young people are under attack, criminalized, militarized, and brutalized. You got SZA standing up saying, I see you, I love you, and I stand with you. And for that, SZA has my respect and my love. Anyway, y'all got my respect and my love. Y'all been watching Night School. I appreciate y'all so much. Thank you for watching tonight. I'm grateful to talk to you all, and I'm grateful to talk to you all again tomorrow, where we will have a one-on-one interview with somebody very, very special. It's a big surprise. In the meantime, hit the like button. Let them YouTube algorithms know you rock with them. Hit the subscribe button. Join the family. Become a subscriber. Get the daily content updates. Hit that little bell next to the subscribe button. It'll let you know every time we put up new content. And of course, if you're so inclined, hit the join button and become a monthly supporter of the channel. The work we do, the videos we put out, the debates, the conversations, all of it, it doesn't come easily. I'm not talking about my labor. I'm fine doing my labor for free because I want to teach the world. I want to offer insights in the world. I want to create a global classroom. But in order to put all this stuff out, we got to pay bills. I got a whole team of people, whether it's editors, whether it's shooters, people who, who actually videotape some of this footage. All of it takes time. I got Mumia Abu Jamal doing a podcast from prison. We want to provide financial support for Mumia and his family. All of this comes at a cost, and I don't have a billionaire writing a check for me. I'm not underwritten or supported by a corporation. There is nobody paying this. This is all out of my pocket. And again, I'm happy to do it, but part of what it means to do independent media is to have community support. And so please, if you can, I ask that you just make a donation when you can. And if you can't, that's okay too. Just hit the like button. Likes and subscriptions, they're free, and they all help grow the channel. So if you do nothing every single day but watch Night School and them ads, I'm grateful. Or if you want to make one-time donation, you can always use the Cash App. You can always use the Venmo, both of which are on the screen right there. You hit $ MLH TV on the Cash App. It's like an old man on the Cash App. Hit the @MLH TV for Venmo, and you get it. And finally, let me just shout out the people who have done that. Again, we saw, first of all, we just saw Meg L, who gifted 1 membership. Thank you so much. Somebody is the beneficiary of your generosity. Hopefully one of y'all caught that. This came from Ronald Honda. I don't know what country this is. So either it's possible I got thousands of dollars from Ronald Honda. It's also possible, depending on the country, that I got enough to buy a stick of bubble gum. Either way, I'm grateful. If every single person donated $1, I'd be excited. Every single person did, I'd be excited. But thank you all. I'm so grateful. Jeremiah Muhammad has continued to donate regularly memberships. And once again, this brother who's working on his PhD, close to done, I hope he's still making sacrifices for the channel, man. I'm grateful. Rachel gifted 1 Marc Lamont Hill membership. Shout out to you, Meg. We love you. You love us. It's a great relationship. And of course, we want to welcome you, C. Pasija 22, for becoming a Marc Lamont Hill official channel member. We love you. We appreciate you. We see y'all. And look forward to talking to everybody tomorrow. Peace.